Hey everyone, John here. Welcome to the Leaders Leading Leaders podcast. Today, I thought we'd have a little bit of coffee time. It's early in the morning here in Oklahoma City, and I've been getting a lot of questions around teams, hybrid teams, how to motivate teams, how to keep teams engaged. So I've been collecting those over the past 2.5 weeks, and I put them in a Word doc. And I thought today would be a great opportunity for us I'll read the question and then I will answer the question and we'll just have an impromptu conversation here. So welcome to the Leaders Leading Leaders podcast. First coffee chat time. So for you new listeners out there, welcome to the Go Be Great community. We do this podcast 3 times a week and this month's theme is teams. So I've been getting a lot of questions around teams. So I have a hybrid team that I currently lead. I have a couple team members that are co-located with me here in Oklahoma City. And then I have team members spread from Washington State all the way to Washington, D.C. and everywhere in between. That's the makeup of my team, just to give you a little bit of background. And then as we get into these questions today, I'll share some of the tips and tricks that I've used with my team and teams in the past, and then we'll just go from there. So if this generates more questions, feel free, put them down in the comments. I look at all those questions. I make sure that I jot them down, and I will either answer them on a social post on one of my platforms. So make sure that you're following those platforms, or I'll get enough of them together and then maybe we can have another coffee chat time. So let's get into this. The first one that I have here is, what innovative tools or activities can we use to strengthen our virtual connections and make remote meetings feel more engaging? So this is a great question. After COVID, many teams, many organizations, many companies moved into a virtual environment. And the rise of platforms like Zoom or Microsoft Teams really has helped virtual or hybrid teams collaborate in meetings together. Even before that, though, let's think about if you iPhone users out there, FaceTime. Right? I mean, many of us have FaceTimed our relatives or somebody, at a store that's looking to pick out a particular baking item. I know sometimes when I go to the store and my wife sends me for a particular item and then I get there and that item is not there, what did I do? I FaceTime her. I show her the aisle of food and then she tells me which one to pick. So we've had this capability for quite some time. Now that we look at it in a team or workplace environment, what are some ways that we can use this? And to go to this question, to make things more engaging. One of the things that I've implemented, and this is on my weekly team meetings. So my meeting structure is I have a weekly team meeting, and then I do one-on-ones, and they're 30-minute one-on-ones, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later because there's a question that asks about that as far as check-ins. So that's my meeting schedule. And if you look at my team, I lead a team of 12 currently, so that's 6 hours for my one-on-ones, and then we normally spend around 45 minutes-ish on our weekly team meeting. So that's 6 hours and 7 hours, let's just call it 7 hours, that I spend a week in meetings with my teams. And each one of those meetings are a little bit different. My team meetings, we've organized them, and I've changed this quite a bit to be more engaging. At first, they were like brief outs. Everybody goes around the room, briefs out on their projects. That isn't really engaging. Yeah, it's good for an awareness standpoint, but as far as an engaging conversation, you really don't get a lot of engagement there. So what we did, though, very important though, to understand from a weekly or bi-weekly basis where people are on particular projects. So we created a list in Microsoft Teams that tracks all of those projects. And then we do it by project. And I've gone back and forth on this. I've done from an individual status. Now we're back to like a projectized or by project status because I may have multiple individuals working on a particular project. So in that list, we identify the project, we identify who it's assigned to or who's working on that project, a brief description. And here, it's just a very short, detailed, if I were to look at it, what would I need to know about the project, and then a status update. So we got rid of our go-arounds, as you would call it, where people would just brief out on projects. So that was the first thing we did to make this more engaging. We took out just the routine tasks, and now what I've replaced it by, who needs what from whom? So I asked that question. If there's anybody waiting on something, a deliverable, or maybe we're waiting on the status of something, or that week, particularly that week, because they're weekly meetings, you have a project or something that's coming up and you need support on, that's a great opportunity for us to identify who needs what from whom. So for us, that's a big piece in that engagement. Because now we're not just briefing out on a project, but it's okay, Carl, I need help this week on Thursday with administering a course or proctoring a test, something like that. Now, let me back up because I dug into the status reporting piece and how we took that out. But for my virtual meetings, and I started this probably, a year and a half ago, I will log on 10 minutes before my virtual meeting. Now, why would you ask 10 minutes? That's just the time that I've dedicated to make sure that I'm logged on. We use Zoom for our team meetings. I open up the Zoom room and I'm in there. Sometimes I'm in there and I'll post a question in the chat. What did you do this weekend? Our weekly meetings are on a Tuesday. If I haven't talked to people on Monday, what have you done this weekend? What are you going to do this week? Maybe, what's the weather like? So I will post a question in the chat. People come in, they see the question, they can either respond in chat or we can have a conversation about it. So that is our opportunity. This kind of simulates for those that have worked in an office environment, whenever people are coming into the boardroom or the meeting room or wherever your meetings took place at, the huddle rooms, and people would sit around the table and chit chat, talk about their weekends. They would have their cup of coffee or whatever their drink of choice was, ask how the kids were doing, ask how your significant others were doing. So this is our opportunity to provide that engagement, that non-related work conversation that would naturally occur prior to a meeting. If it were in person, we can do that in a virtual meeting. Sometimes I'll pop on and somebody will already be in the room and we'll spark up a conversation. And then somebody else will join in. It's funny, and we have this running joke that all the conversations somehow lead to food. So like, what did you bring for lunch? Or what did you have for breakfast? Or what are you cooking this weekend, right? Or if there's a holiday coming up, what's your dish that you make? Trust me, all conversations lead to food. Test that theory for me. But those are ideas for you to create that engagement. And there's plenty of other tools that you can do throughout the meeting. Whiteboarding. I've got a great exercise that when we brainstorm, and you can even bring a whiteboard up prior to the meeting instead of having a camera on and ask the question there on the whiteboard and have everybody kind of type in on the whiteboard. It gets them engaged. It creates that sense of community, those types of things. So whiteboards, I know, are an option or a tool in Zoom. I know they're an option and tool in Microsoft Teams. So that's another, activity that you could do. Polling. Pose a question. And if you need to make a decision, or maybe if you're marketing and you need to decide on a color or a font style, you can turn that into a poll in a virtual environment. Those are very easy to create. So now you're getting that engagement through other ways. Yeah, you could ask the question, hey, what color or what font should we go with? What style? Give me some feedback on this. You can even ask for feedback in the chat or an open text field. So there's a lot of opportunities for us to get engagement in those meetings. Hopefully those examples will help you. So let's see. Let's go on to our next question here. This question is around deadlines. So in the world of tight deadlines, how can we incorporate regular check-ins that help us stay motivated and aligned without adding that pressure? Great question here. Deadlines are important. Deadlines, they're a necessary evil. The definition of a project by nature is it has a start and a stop. Projects can't go on forever. So there has to be a deadline there. One of the ways that I currently accomplish this, I mentioned I do 30-minute check-ins individually with each one of my team members. In that 30 minutes, I break it up into thirds. So 10 minutes, it's that individual, whatever they need to talk to me about, whatever items that they need to bring, that's their dedicated time. And then a third, the middle third, 10 minutes, that's my time. And then the final third is our time to look forward. So that's an opportunity for me to gauge, get some feedback on a project. Maybe that deadline is this week and they are behind or they're waiting on a response from somebody. The last question I always ask before I get off the phone is, how can I support you? Or the call, video call. How can I support you? And in that case, that's an opportunity again for them to alert me. Yeah, I've sent 3 emails to this individual or this organization or this other section in the company, and I haven't heard anything back. That's not them tattletelling. What that is alerting me that maybe I need to check in. Maybe that person's out of the office on extended leave. Or maybe they didn't get the email. They're swamped in emails. Subject header lines are always an important part for us to make sure that when we're sending emails that an action, if you need an action, go ahead. Another thing that gets people's attention is like 4th response or 5th response. And so people will start to answer there. But those are ways that I make sure on a one-on-one environment that deadlines, nothing's falling behind or they don't need support. So the other piece of this question at regular check-ins, I mentioned earlier that we've gone to more of a projectized status reporting. So I can filter in that list on Teams by individuals' names. I go in there, I'll spend 5 minutes prior to the meeting, I'll filter on it, or during the meeting, during my third, I'll filter on it and I'll say, okay, where are we on this? I noticed that this project's coming up. Any support you need? Because a lot of times they'll put hold or they'll put waiting in the project status. So that prompts me to question. If I've seen that hold or that waiting for 2 weeks straight, probably something that needs to go on there, right? So again, that's a way that I can, stay connected with the project, not micromanage. I'm not talking about micromanaging, like being in the weeds and being in the detail and asking about every single thing. But I think where this question is going is, at those check-in points, where can I, as the leader of the organization, just take a broad look, again, without adding any additional pressure, because that was the end, without adding pressure. So I'm not micromanaging. I'm not in the weeds. I'm not pinging them saying, hey, listen, I know I saw this date. It's due on Friday. Where are you at? Are you going to be done? That sort of thing, because now you're adding pressure to them. But it's simply, I see that there's something due, any support needed. Or on that one-on-one, just an impromptu discussion of, hey, I see this project's coming due. I noticed that the status hasn't changed in a couple weeks. What support you need? So those are ways that I check in regularly without adding pressure. So hope that answered that. Let's see. This next question comes as we navigate shifts. So how can we encourage a mindset of curiosity and experimentation within the team? So I'm going to answer this question from a change management perspective. And this is one thing that I experience in my organizations and when I work with others. Change is inevitable. It's not if, it's when we will change. And a lot of times organizations can go through a massive amount of change. It barely feels like the concrete's dried, and here either comes new leadership in, or here comes a change, maybe budgets changed or resources have changed, whatever that is in your organization, things have changed. So when I look at, encourage a mindset of curiosity, because as change, if it occurs, change occurs too rapidly, what I've seen in organizations is they will delay. Your team will delay implementing the change because in their minds, they're like, this is just another flavor. I will wait this change out because I know that another change will come. Any of you experience that yourselves? So how do you encourage this mindset of curiosity? One of the ways that I like to do this is I'm very honest with my team. So when I have conversations with them, down to earth, I might start it out saying, I understand we just recently changed, we got our processes in place, and now this is a change to those or a modification to those processes. We don't have to agree with the change, but what do you need for us to implement, or what do you need from me, to make sure that we're moving along with this change? Now we're into that curiosity mode. So they're thinking. I've asked a question and they've become curious about it. The other thing that I will like to do is like what I call a delta exercise. So what our current state is, and then what the future state needs to look like, and anything in between. So for people that maybe can't make that leap mentally, once we start writing it down, what's the current state look like? What does the future state look like? So that is the impact of the change. What are the things we need to do to bridge that gap? And then now what comes out of that are some bullets or some action items. And people, when they see the vision, when they can see a path, now what happens is they lower their maybe resistance and they become more curious. They're like, oh, okay, it's not as bad as what I thought it was going to be. Sometimes we tell ourselves stories and that builds up. So again, those are some exercises that I like to use to encourage that mindset, especially in an organization that is in constant change, or maybe it's a big organizational change, a restructure, a merger, or something like that. Especially, now you're merging two organizations together that have different cultures. One organization, versus another organization, you get that mindset versus, remember I even said it, versus another organization, when you need to change that mindset of collaboration, because now it opens up people to being curious. Okay. So I hope that I answered that question. Let's see. Innovation. So this one has to do with innovation. And I have, a couple more here to answer. So I hope this is helpful. Again, give me a thumbs up if you guys like this format. I like to try new things. It keeps it fresh for me. Hopefully it keeps it fresh for you. So put a comment down, give me a thumbs up, let me know. Innovation. What would happen if we dedicated an hour each week to brainstorming wild ideas? No limits, just to spark creativity. I love that. I'm a big idea guy. So that's where I live. That's what gets me excited. I don't get so excited when it comes to the implementation and the day-to-day, the tactical stuff. Just part of my personality. I realize that. Although I do have to do the tactical stuff, it just doesn't bring me energy, right? I love to ideate. And this question speaks to me. I have a feeling that you've probably been listening to the podcast, so you know me. I think that would be awesome. An hour brainstorming session a week is an opportunity for you to spark that curiosity and that creativity. I think as adults, and my good friend Jake has a course on that, he calls it the 10-minute creative. So check him out, and I'll actually have him on a guest later on, probably next week, and he can talk more about that. But we lose our creativity as we get older, through our experiences, through our failures, through our fears. Just think, if you ever observe a child around the 1 to 2, maybe even 3 year range, they are so creative. My granddaughter, the other day, I got a rhino that sits back here, and it's rhinoceros. I got it from a trip that I went on, and she was in here with me, and she picked up that rhinoceros, and she made a barking sound like a dog. And just at that moment, I was like, you know what? We've been conditioned as an adult to know that that's a rhino. Rhinos don't bark. We would never pick up that rhino and start barking, right? Because that's not a sound that a rhino makes, but that's her. So that creative piece, I think that an hour, especially if you're devoting an hour a week to brainstorming ideas, either from process improvements or just what the future looks like, right? You as the leader create the vision. How you get there, it can zig and zag. That's the creative part. I love ideating. So anytime that you can devote some time in a week, and I'm not saying you got to do an hour, but brainstorm. Talk about it. And let's talk about brainstorming real quick. You can do it many different ways. If you have a virtual team, I mentioned those whiteboarding applications within the platforms that you can put up. You can do little yellow stickies. One organization that I worked with had an idea board. So it was out in a common area around their break room, and it was they called it Big Ass Wild Goals or Big Ass Wild Dreams. It would be one of those things that they'd be in the room grabbing a cup of coffee or snack or whatever, and they would just write something up there with the organization. Maybe get beanbag chairs and put them in the room, or change the color of paint, get better chairs. I mean, anything. Nothing was off the map. It could be work related, it could be non-work related, but it was that big idea kind of thing to where maybe change the format of the office environment, that sort of thing, and it didn't necessarily, I'm focusing on the environment piece a lot, but it could be maybe look at the structure of our meetings. Are they too long? Is it too much? A lot of what I do on the brainstorming piece, I ask those questions. What do we need to start? What do we need to stop? And what do we need to continue? That gets the creative juices rolling for individuals where they start ideating, they start brainstorming. So this is awesome. Like creativity, I tell you, we don't have enough of it in our organizations. And you got different people that think differently. Some people are very logically, very grounded. They are your creatives naturally. So if you can get that right balance and you can begin to get your very concrete minded people, even thinking just a little outside of the box, you've done your job as a leader. So great question. Thanks for asking. All right. Last but not least, this one has to do with professional development. And I absolutely love this question. I'm in training. I've been in training for over 2 decades. And so anytime I get a question on professional development, I get goosebumps. I'll just read the question, then I'll answer it. How can we set up a learning buddy system where team members can share skills and knowledge with each other? This is something that I am doing right now. Like I just implemented probably less than 2 weeks ago with our team. And this has to do with the learning buddy. So first of all, let me just frame that. I consider a learning buddy a mentor. When new individuals come or new team members come into the organization, I pair them with a mentor, a one-on-one that they can help. And normally that mentor isn't someone who's been there for a while. They've maybe be the least experienced in the group. And the reason I do that is because they're also learning. I think it was Socrates or Plato. One of the philosophers said, learn one, do one, teach one. And when you teach, that's where the mastery, that's where the rote memory comes into play, and it really sets the foundation for that particular knowledge or skill. So that's why I pair them with a relatively new person in the team, not the most seasoned person of the team. So that's a technique I use as far as pairing mentors. But let me go back to this. Really what I'm calling is a lunch and learn, brown bag, show and tell. And I've set a Word document up, it has dates. So we've picked a date, we've picked a time. And what I've asked the team to do is sign up to demonstrate a particular task. It could be how they go into a system and query information. It could be how they use a checklist. It could be how they set up for a learning event or how they conclude a learning event. It could be how they use Microsoft Teams and how they place folders or how they organize folders. It could be anything that we already have a process for, but they're following the process. But having somebody demo and seeing somebody else and the ability for people to ask questions, that is invaluable. I tell you what, that is very valuable when it comes to learning. And so with this system that we're doing it once every other week. It's a bi-weekly schedule. One, the team members sign up. They tell me what they're going to demo. And then we set aside an hour to go in. They launch whatever they're doing. They go through it. It allows people to ask questions. We're able to modify the process if our processes, because that's what a lot of times happens is, yeah, you may have an SOP, a standard operating procedure for a particular process or a desk guide or whatever you want to call it in your particular organization. But then when you develop that, what happens? It goes into the nethers, it goes into a folder, and nobody ever looks at it again until someone new comes in. So this is also a way for you to continually improve your processes. Pull out that process document that's matched to that particular task. And now as that task is being demonstrated, if there's something that we need to change in that process, that's the time to do it. So it's almost like you get more bang for your buck there. You're creating learning buddies. You're, developing that corporate knowledge through whatever demo or whatever process that you're going to look at. And you're revamping or you're continually improving your process. I couldn't think of a better way to continually improve your organization, share knowledge. This Learning Buddy system, that is a great question, because that skill and knowledge, you never know. And I always call it, somebody's going to win the lotto and walk out the door. And if that person has corporate knowledge or you're one deep in that area, where does that leave you as a leader, right? As far as a team leaves you high and dry. So sharing that corporate knowledge is very, very important for us. I hope that this helped. Again, give me a thumbs up. I love doing this. Tell me if you love doing it, because I want to bring value to you. Very impromptu, just kind of off the cuff. I love these questions. Keep them coming. Keep them coming. Put them down in the comments on any one of the podcasts, or make sure you're following our socials, because I'll answer them either in TikTok or YouTube Short or on the Facebook, Instagram page, or over on Twitter. So we're spread all across all platforms, and it's just an easy way for me to engage with you. But let me know if it's working, because I want to make sure that when you ask a question, it just doesn't feel like it goes into the round cylinder trash can that you're being addressed. Okay. Thank you again for taking time to listen. I hope this helps somebody out there. Go be great. We'll talk to everyone later. Bye-bye. If you like what you're hearing, do us a favor. Click on that subscribe button. Give us a thumbs up or leave a comment. That lets us know that what we are putting out benefits you. If you want additional information or resources or learn how to work with me, head on over to thejohnespinosa.com, because when we become better versions of ourselves, it helps us get others to where they're going. Go be great. Talk to everyone later.